all I do is say thanks, and I think about the feature, and then with my agent we start off with the PR, and then I'll design the feature as I see fit. The agent rarely reuses, like maybe I reuse some code, but it's more like it gives the agent a good understanding of what the goal is, and sometimes it's very useful because it's pretty bugs, right? But I basically rewrite every pull request and weave it in. Also a lot of people, let's just say the overall code quality of PRs went down a lot because people write code, and building a successful feature still needs a lot of understanding of your overall design, and if you cannot do that, you will have a harder time steering the agent, and the output will be bad.
Yeah, and if you don't have a feedback loop to close it, etc.
Yeah. So I found it highly effective. Like at PSV Kit, sometimes a pull request was like a week in the work. And you comment on it, and then someone has to context switch, and you wait for CI for 40 minutes. No, I have the discussion. I see, okay, how would this affect something? Like I let them all review. They will bring something up. I have some ideas as well. We're gonna reshape it into a form that fits my vision, and then we weave in the code. It's literally, there's so many new words I use for like writing code now with those models, which is so funny, like weaving in code in an existing structure. And sometimes you have to like change the structure so it would fit.
Now, imagine that you would hire 1 or 2 people to make it a small team. How do you think in this world, and you want to keep doing what you're doing, how do you think things like code review, CI, CD would change?
I don't care much about CI.
Why not? You used to care a lot. Like a PSP dev kit, you used to care a lot, right?
And I still do this. There's value, but I have local CI. I'm a little bit of DAH pilled now that
because agent runs a test, right?
Yeah, and it's just way faster. I wanna push on the back on the PI and wait for 10 minutes to wait for CI.
Because you waited 10 minutes on the agent already.
If the test passed locally, we merge. And then yeah, sometimes main slips a little bit, but it's usually very close because maybe sometimes I forget and the agents call it gate. I don't know where that's coming from. Should I run full gate? So now I call it gate. Full gate is like linting and building and checking and running all the tests. And I almost think it like, because it's a wall, you know, like it's like, because the linter and like the builder and the tester, it's almost like a gate before my code goes out. So I'm not always like, okay, once you're done, like commit this, run full gate. Like I'm slowly adopting their language. But
if you hired like 1 more person to work on this, you probably wouldn't do code reviews either. But that's what I'm sensing. You'd probably trust this person to run like pick up your working style, right?
Even in Discord,
因为你屁股太臭了，所以你最困。
You still need to have style. Like there was like this one pull request that adds voice calling. So now I literally I can tell Claude, hey, can you call this restaurant?
我可以得到 Latios， 我在哪里可以直播？现在有另外一个账号可以直播。对，我们 over account。Latios 你知道，我可以试着。Latios。 你知道会，但是你不知道英文名字，你会知道是哪一个。Latios 是蓝色的，第3级的 Pokemon。不是我喜欢蓝色的，我不会用红色的。红色的没有那么强，它是蓝色的比较强。它红色好像是那个 defender， 它 defense 比较高。它那个蓝色的，它那个 special attack 比较高。就是另外它另外一个。 它也是 Dragon and Psychic type。我可以试试，因为我有那个 free day license。free day license 它只可以给我用3天，3天。它这个游戏还可以，也不是最好玩的，就是它没有 Pokemon Go 那么上瘾。这个游戏应该中国也可以玩得到，因为它就是中国公司的。好像如果你 这个。我可以用 Gaudible， 为什么不行啊？这是中国公司。但你可以用 VPN 不是就可以下载？你 Pornotopia 都可以下载的，我觉得应该可以。这本来就是中国公司知道的。还可以，我觉得很像那个，它也是一个 team 游戏，可以跟朋友一起玩，在同样的 game。我觉得如果我是8岁，我肯定会玩几年这个东西。你就可以用 VPN 玩，你用那个 TikTok， 我把它换在我另外一个账号在 TikTok。可以看得见。我现在电脑玩，我开关可以改了。我昨天换一个软件就可以改开关，那第一个不能改开关了。哇，我的 teammate 真的很差，teammate 的能力不会很强。
front and reserve the seats. And it can do that. But it's quite a big new module that like touches a lot of places, and like you have to have this feeling. It's just like this ick. I got a little bit this ick. It's like I want to merge this, but this is becoming bloatware. So I had this idea of like my typical way, let's make a CLI out of it. And I already had a project where I tried to solve something like this, but I'm finished. So I opened up Codex and said, hey, look at this PR, look at this project. Could we weave this feature in? I can't say weave. I'm like, so
let's keep it.
Could we weave this feature into the CLI? What are the up and down sides? And then we're like, tell me like, oh yeah, I could do this and this. They give me honest opinion. Would this, to me, this sounds like it would fit into the project. It's like, and it's like, yeah, you would get this and this benefits that we cannot do if we make a CLI. Okay, but I don't like this. This is getting built where could we build a plugin architecture? And then like one of the secret hacks on using AI effectively is to reference other projects. Like I constantly tell it, look into this folder because I solved it there and I solved it there, and all the previous thinking I did to like solve the problem well, AI is so good at this still to like read the code and understand my ideas. I don't have to like explain it again. Or if I explain it again, I might like make mistakes that like wouldn't get across exactly the idea that I have in my head. So in this case, I know that Mario, who does like shitty coding agent, which is like actually very much not shitty coding agent. That's not high. I know that he had this plugin architecture that would load code via GT, and because it's all TypeScript. So it was like, can you look into this folder and this folder? And then it just came up with this really insanely good plugin architecture. Again, by like being inspired by other people. And then that's why I have this feeling. And then I came up with that's what I did last night basically.
I mean, it sounds like this is going to be completely different. Like, PRs are like in your workflow. You're not using PRs that much. CI is just different. It's tests are still doing. There's a more important feedback loop. You're using things more like weaving instead of code. You're talking more about architecture and taste. It sounds like a pretty big shift to me. In this world, let's assume you get to the point where you're hire the next 1 and 2 and 3 developers on this team. Let's imagine that this thing gets a life of its own, and maybe it's a business as well. What skills would you look for, and what would you advise an experienced engineer right now? Who would you be excited to work with? What kind of either expertise?
没有借，你拿回去吗？
It sounds like who can work in this way or can pick up this way of working.
Someone who's active on GitHub and does open source, and someone where I have the feeling that they love the game. The way you learn in this new world is by like trying stuff, and it very much feels like a game where you improve your skills as you get better. Like a music instrument, you have to like keep trying. They are now this efficient, this fast, and I don't know, like I think like the other day I had like 600 commits in a single day. It's like completely nuts, and it works. Like it's not like there was somebody did a code review and said like, oh, this is actually not slop. And like, yeah,
a lot of skill that went into it.
Yeah, it's a lot of hard work, but you need to play with the technology and learn, and then you will get. In the beginning, it might be frustrating. I don't know, kind of like you start going to the gym. It's gonna suck. It's gonna be painful. But very quickly you get better, and you feel that your workflow gets faster, and then you feel improvement, and then you get hooked. But yeah, play and yeah, also work hard.
Yeah, I mean you're putting in more hours into this thing.
I've never worked more. Even when I had my company, I've never worked so hard as I do now. Not because I have to, but because it's so addictive and so much fun. But also because right now I'm like using the moment where it has traction, and there's a lot of people who like are pushing me.
I feel, could it be because I think you've got pretty good business sense, not just in the business, but seeing when there's an opportunity, there is an opening to get traction, right? Like what you said, for people to work in the open, right now it seems novel. You're telling me you don't think you could, even if you wanted to hire, you don't think you could hire people because there's not many people working in the open, clearly using these things. Fast forward 2 or 3 years from now, once a bunch of people start to do it and everyone does it, it's kind of like moot a little bit. So there's also that. A group that a lot of people are worried about is the new grads, the people with no experience who are either in school or about to graduate, because of course you've been an experienced engineer. By the time this came around, you have a lot of things to build on. Putting that yourself into shoes of someone like that and knowing what you don't know, what would you recommend of activities that they do, things that they build or try? And would you recommend on focusing on the fundamentals of software engineering, on the agents, kind of mixing the two?
I would recommend them to be infinitely curious. Yes, it's going to be harder to enter this market. It's
不是 Galate， 它是 Galate 是另外一个。
To the game experience. I don't think you need to write a lot of code, but you need to. I don't know. There's a lot of open source that is complex that you can like check out and learn. And you have an infinitely efficient machine that is able to explain.
我觉得 Venusaur 更强在这个游戏。
You can ask all questions why was it built this way to like gain some understanding, but it requires real curiosity, and I don't think Venusaur is right now set up to teach you that in a really good way. This is usually something you discover through pain. It's not going to be easy for new people, but they have the benefit that they are not tainted by all the experience. Like they they use agents in ways that we don't even think about. Again, because they don't know that it doesn't work, and by then it probably does.
And also their friends use it all the time.
Yeah, like the other day, I have this little menu bar app for cost tracking on Cursor and Cloud Code and everything, and it was a bit slow. So I
我
was
昨
like,
天
okay,
跟你说
let's
那个
do-
那个什么
let's
麻
do
花
this
那个
and my
东
old
西
way is like I open instruments and click around, and it would just call Extras and do everything by the terminal. It blew me away. It was like I didn't even have to open instruments anymore. It just like made it faster, and then did like some recommendations. And like all of that sounds good. Do it.
Yeah, I think we might be underestimating both like how resourceful people entering tech have been, also how young people, if I think about some of the great companies started, they were very young and obviously very inexperienced, but had a lot of passion. So that's there as well. And yeah, it's a big opportunity. I'm especially taking like I have to take it in like all the things you mentioned about just your way, we've been coding, not caring about PR, not caring about code reviews. It's a big change because these things have been us with like for like 15 plus years of beer, like they have been. In fact, a lot of it has been kind of solid building blocks of PSP of it, right?
Yeah, we need a lot of new things. Even when I get a PR, I'm actually more interested in the prompts than in the code. I ask people to please add the prompts and some do, and I read the prompts more than I read the code. Because to me, this is a way higher signal of like how did you get to the solution, what did you actually ask, how much steering was involved, than the actual output. To me, this gives me more idea about the output. I don't have to read the code. Or like, if someone wants a feature, I ask for a prompt request. Like, write it up really well, because then I can just point my agent to the issue and we'll build it. So because the work is the thinking about how it should work and what the details are, and if someone else does it for me, I can literally say build and it will work. And then of course I think about it, but it will really. Or if someone sends me a PR that has just a few fixes, I told people please don't do that. It takes me 10 times more time to review that and just type in fix in codex and wait a minute. So there's all these insane things that are like would have been completely different, even at the beginning. Now we have a one-liner, but for the last 2 weeks, like when you got really traction, I told people to just point an agent at the repository to configure it. So I didn't have onboarding, but we had Claude code-based onboarding, where Claude would like check out the Git repository, read the things, and write the configuration for those people and set everything up so it works. Like set up a launch agent that didn't have the manual setup because it was not a priority anymore because agents cannot do it for you, and since the product was built by agents, they structured it exactly the way agents expect things to be named and saying there's certain ways that are encoded in the weights how they expect things to be named, and everything is exactly like how they expect. So they're really good at navigating their product. So it was not a priority to work on onboarding as much. I mean, eventually I want this magic experience, but it was more important to like make sure that your message arrives and that things don't explode. So onboarding was literally like type this prompt into your agent, which would have been mind blowing even a year ago.
All right, so to wrap up, we'll do some rapid questions. So I'll just ask and you tell me what's on your mind. What's a tool that is not a CLI, not an ID, it can be physical, that you use, you would recommend?
I buy a lot of gadgets, and many of them, that's the way. But there's this one kind of crappy thing that was not expensive that gives me almost unlimited amount of joy, and it's like this Android-powered photo stand where I can upload pictures and where like it has an email address and friends can send pictures and it will just show pictures. And I put a few in my house again, and I mean even animations are a little crappy because it was Android and it's terrible from the technology, but it gives me infinite number of joy because it is low tech. It just shows pictures and it reminds me of happy moments in my life. And it was like $200, and I don't know. To be honest, it gets me more joy than the latest iPhone. I bought the iPhone 17. I still haven't unpacked it because in my head I wanted it, but then I couldn't get around to it because it's just a hassle to like move the SIMs around, and so like basically no feelable benefit. But like this little device gives me infinite joy.
What's something that helps you recharge outside of tech, like just moving away from tech and screens?
Okay, I'm gonna try Latios. Speed, let's see. I'll try Latios. Let's go, Latios. Let's go with the legendary Pokemon. Latios. I used to play with Latios more when I was a kid. Gauchon Palacios. Let's go Latios. My teammates are so bad.
Keeps me sane even if I work crazy hours is going to the gym. Even better, working with a coach and leaving my phone in the locker. And then I really have like a good hour where I just feel me and I'm like in the moment and I'm not distracted by notifications or tempted to like touch my phone. Like we need more time for this. Or even sometimes I go for a walk and I leave my phone at home and it feels very scary. It's almost like an organ dynamic, you know? It's like your body knows where it is, and if you don't know where your phone is, you freak out. I'm having a blast.
Love it. This is great. Okay, thanks very much. Well, this was a super interesting conversation. And it feels to me that how one-person teams build software with AI is already completely different to what we've been used to. One thing that really caught my attention is how Peter thinks in prompts and not pull requests, and how he weaves in the code and no longer merges the code. He doesn't find pull requests all that useful and would rather get prompt suggestions even on GitHub. I do think we might have to rethink the importance of prompts, or at the very least sharing of prompts in software development, the more we use AI. And AI agents. Another thing that struck with me was Peter's emphasizing how important it is to close the loop. As Peter explained, the reason AI is so good at coding, but often mediocre at writing, is because you can validate code. You can compile it, run tests, check the output. So the secret to making AI system development work well is to design your system to close the loop and have the AI run the tests. Finally, I was wondering if Peter is in the flow as much even when he's not writing code. Turns out he is. He's in the flow more than ever, and he told me that it's mentally more exhausting to juggle several AI agents in parallel than it was just to write code. My feeling is that someone who is a great developer without AI can be an excellent kind of code architecture or hardcore person with AI. This is just a gut feeling I've had so far, but Peter seems to prove it. Finally, we should note that Clawbot is more of a YOLO project than most production apps, so take the approaches that we discussed with a grain of salt. At the same time, I do think that a lot of what Peter does could well spread to building production code, except review and validation will become a much more important step in those projects. If you enjoy this podcast, please do subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and on YouTube. A special thank you if you also leave a rating on the show. Thanks, and see you in the next one.
What if you could merge 600 commits on a single day and none of it was slop? This is what today's guest, Peter Steinberger, the creator of CloudBot, claims he's doing. Peter is a standout developer who built PSPDFKit, the PDF framework used on more than 1 billion devices. Then he burned out, sold his shares, and disappeared from tech for 3 years. This year he came back, and how he built and what he's doing now looks nothing like traditional software development. In today's episode we cover why he no longer reads most of the code he ships, and why that's not as crazy as it sounds. How he's building CloudBot, his wildly popular personal assistant project, which feels like the future of Siri. The closing the loop principle that separates effective AI assistant coding from frustrating vibe coding. Why he says code reviews are dead and PR should be called prompt requests, and many more. If you're interested in how the software engine workload could change in the coming years thanks to AI, this episode is for you. This episode is presented by Statsig, the unified platform for flags, analytics experiments, and more. Check out the show notes to learn more about them, the Pragmatic Summit on the 11th of February in San Francisco that I'm hosting with them, and our other season sponsors. All right, Pete, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Gage.
It is awesome to meet you in person.
Yeah, and I almost messed it up.
Yeah. What happened? You lost track of time. Does that happen often? And how so?
Not usually. This is an interesting time for me because my latest project is blowing up.
Claude, right?
CloudBot, yeah.
CloudBot.
I'm struggling a bit to get enough sleep, but it's interesting. I never had a community blowing up so fast, and it's just incredibly fun to work with.
So before we get into CloudBot and all the fun stuff you're doing, I want to rewind all the way back. You created PSPDFKit, which is used, I think, on more than 1 billion devices, users. If you see a PDF renderer, you probably see that. But even before that, how did you get into tech?
Oh my god, how did you get into tech? So, I'm from rural Austria, always mobbing the introvert. So eventually we always had like summer guests, and one of them was a computer nerd, and then I kind of got hooked with like the machine he had, and begged my mom to buy me one. And ever since then,
This was in high school or so?
I guess I was 14.
Yeah.
And ever since I started tinkering, like I can remember the earliest thing was like I stole an old DOS game from my school and then wrote a copy protection for the floppy disk so I could sell it. It took like 2 minutes to load. I was just always tinkering. I was also playing a lot of computer games, of course. But like building stuff almost feels like playing a computer game. Like definitely right now, it feels better than tutorial. When I started out, I read like the equivalent of bash scripts for Windows, and then I did like websites. So I guess a little bit of JavaScript, even though I had no clue what I was doing. And then the actual first language where I had to learn how to build things is when I started university. And I never met my dad, and I come from a poor family, so I always had to work. I had to finance my own studies, right? So when other people were on holiday, I just worked full time at a company. So the first real job I had was in Vienna. It was supposed to be 1 month, and then they kept me for 6 months. It was just a bridge between military and my university. And I kept working there for like I think 5 years. And on the first day they gave me this huge book. Well, maybe that huge. It says Microsoft MFC. I still have nightmares. And I got like it was like this is terrible. Like for the next win, I just silently used .NET. I just didn't tell them. And like a few months in, I just told them, yeah, about the tech stack, I did a few modernizations, but then it was too late. I did this a few times in this company. I don't know why they kept me. No, because my shit worked. So I did .NET. And I actually did it. .NET 2.0 had like generics. It took insanely long for the application to launch because like everything was compiled at first start, and like the hard disk was like. Do you remember?
So you how did you stumble into both iOS and where did the idea from PSPDF come from?
Not even the first one. And the first one wasn't even available in
Austria. Yeah.
A little time went on, and I was at university, and a friend showed me the iPhone, and I think I touched it for a minute, and then I immediately bought one. Like this. Like it clicked when I felt it. And to me this was like a holy F moment, because it was just like so different and so much better. So I got one. I was still not thinking about building for it, you know. That was.
What one was this? 2009, 10, something like that.
Yeah. And then I used their browser. I can say the story. I was literally driving in the subway, and by the time I was using a gay dating app, and this was iPhone OS 2. Yeah. So I long time ago, I typed this long message. And we're just going, and the chance to hit the send button, and then an error message came, but there was no copy paste. There was no screenshot. So it was just like, and I couldn't scroll anymore because like scrolling was disabled. So, like this long message was like a little bit emotional, was gone, and I was so mad. I'm like, what the hell? I went home, and I downloaded Xcode. That's where the window came, and I was like, where's the IDE? So it was like I was like, this is unacceptable. I basically hacked the website. I used regular expressions to like download to parse the HTML, which is like totally not something you should do. And I built an app, And I used iPhone OS 3 beta with like core data in beta, regexkit Lite. I used a hacked version of GCC that backported the blocks compiler, so I could use blocks in iPhone OS 3. It took me quite a while to anything work. It was like I had no idea what I was doing, and I was like using all kind of like beta tech. But eventually, I got it to work, and I wrote that company. It's like, hey, I'm making an app. What do you think about it? Got no response, of course. So I was like, let's just put it in the App Store.
And this was for the dating app, right?
Yeah.
So you just like, you saw their APIs, you could just like easily like build a client on top
API
of it.
was HTML.
Oh.
I was just literally parsing HTML.
Oh, so you kind of parse the HTML, kind of turn it into your own, like each use it as an API. Oh, clever. I mean, this was back in the day where no one thought this would happen, but
I put it in the App Store. I charged $5 for it, and I made like 10K in the first month. And I had no clue what I was doing, and there was like so many complex tech stuff. This was very early on, but there was a lot of weird forms on Apple.
Yeah.
So I just put in the bank account of my grandpa. And then one day my grandpa called me, yeah, something is weird, like I got this huge payment from Apple. I'm like, this is mine, don't touch it. But the funny thing was then this blew off. And I remember I was in a club one day and like I saw someone using my app. And I was so proud. And I wanted to like tap him on the shoulder and say, I built this. And I was like, really weird. So I didn't. And then I went to the company I worked for 5 years and told them like, I'm gonna pursue this. This is really exciting. And my boss was like mocking me.
how really?
They're like, oh, you're making a mistake, this is a fair, this will not go, blah, 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 blah. And you know what that got me? That's what you call it as a chip on your shoulder. I'm like, one day, I'm gonna have a company that's worth more money than yours. Well, it took me 8 years. So I got hooked. Like I'm a little different personality, so which you see again right now. But I worked a lot on this app. I learned in high speed, and this was also the time that I started Twitter. And that was usually hugely influential for my career. I made this app actually quite good. And then one day, I was at a party at 3 a.m., slightly intoxicated, and I got a call from a US number. The guy on the phone was like, yeah, hello, this is John from Apple. Yeah, there's a problem with your application, like some people reported pictures. And that was it, that was the end of my app.
It was good until it lasted.
And I just quit my job and was like, well, F you Apple. I did freelance work. I was at DubDub. I was introduced to
DubDub.DC.
Yes. Sorry for the insider terms. I was introduced to someone as one of the best iOS developers in Austria at a bar at 2 a.m. in San Francisco. And I basically got a job in the US. And then I moved to the US for a while. And then I went to the Nokia development phase. And this is all like Stone Age. Like, oh my god. And then someone came up to me and said, yeah, they built this app. Something in Europe. And it works, but it crashes sometimes. And it was like a magazine viewer, right? It was back when the iPad just came out. And Steve Jobs said that like, this is the savior. So everyone was building magazine apps. And I was like, that sounds like an interesting short-term gig. And then I was like, okay, I'll help you out. And I opened the app and it was like, oh, the worst code of iOS that I've ever seen in my life. It was literally one file. It was like thousands of lines.
Called Objective-C.
Yes, where they used Windows as apps. I didn't know it worked. I was surprised it worked at all. It felt like a house of cards, and I tried to search any fixings, but like as soon as you touch something else will break. So I got it somewhat stabilized. I told him like, look, this is like madness. I'm gonna rewrite this for you. Yeah, but it took half a year. I'm gonna do it in a month. Well, it took me 2 months. I wasn't that far off. And then here I was working on a PDF viewer. On every technical problem, the domain is I wouldn't say like completely unimportant, but you can always find interesting problems in every domain. And there was a lot of interesting problems because you had a C call that would render a PDF that would maybe take 30 megabytes, but the whole system had 64 megabytes. So if you're not very smart and like very careful what you do in the background and when, the OS would just kill you. I got really fixated at like making it good, like when the rotation is like the page would like animate. So I like those details. I spent way too much time on it. That's why it took 2 months instead of 1. But the end result was it's good. And then I worked with them for a while, and then a friend texted me up. It's like, no, but it's Maxim, it's really hard. I'm like, no way, it's hard. I know, like I did it.
You just built one.
And it was like, can you give me the code? I'm like, sure. So I told him, like I extracted the part of the PDF from his magazine app. And I made sure like the other person was okay. And then I sold him that. I was like, well, if he's interested in that, why let's not try to sell it to other people? I used a WordPress template and mutilated it to run on different pages. And then when you did the fastlink flow at the end, you got a Dropbox link to one person on Dropbox. This is source code zip. And I put this in one afternoon and I tweeted it. And then in that week, 3 people bought it. And it was like, I guess $200. But back then And then for me, this was like amazing. And not only I got like 3 people who just bought it, and like 10 emails from 10 people who complained about it. Because they wanted it, but they didn't have the features they wanted. You know, it's like, I got Nerd Snipe. I was like, oh, I didn't have text selection. Oh, how hard can it be? 3 months later. Oh yeah, it's really hard.
Text selection in a PDF specifically.
Yeah. You know the saying like, the companies are built by young people because they don't know how hard it is? Yeah, I had no idea what an insane madness this file format is.
Peter was talking about how some problems look deceptively simple. PDF rendering is a good example. You look at it and think, how hard could it be? And then you spend months on edge cases that you didn't even know existed. This looks easy until you build a pattern shows up in other places too. Internal tooling for feature flags and experimentation is a classic example. Teams often underestimate how much work it is to build the infrastructure around these tools. There's a reason big tech companies like Uber invested years into building internal experimentation and feature flagging systems, which brings me to Statsig, our presenting partner for the season. Statsig gives you the complete toolkit without building it yourself. You get feature flags, experimentation, and product analytics all in one platform tied to the same underlying user assignments and data. In practice, it looks like this. You roll out a change to 1% of users first. You see how it moves the top pipeline metrics you care about, conversion, retention, whatever is relevant for the release. If something goes wrong, instant rollback. If it's working, you can confidently scale it up. Companies like Notion went from single-digit experiments per quarter to over 300 experiments with Statsig. They ship over 600 features behind feature flags, moving fast while protecting against metrics regression. Microsoft, Atlassian, and Brex use Statsig for the same reason. It's the infrastructure that enables both speed and reliability at scale. Statsig has a generous free tier to get started. Pricing per team starts at $150 per month. To learn more and get a 30-day enterprise trial, go to statsig.com/pragmatic. And now, let's get back to Peter and why rendering PDFs was a surprisingly hard problem.
But now, I remember this a few weeks ago, they did something in PDF and they wanted my help. And I just told them, like, I'm sorry, like, I did my deed. I know more about PDF than any sane person ever should know. And when I went to therapy, good luck. But that took off. And I just, while I was waiting for my visa, I worked on this project and it just kept on, more people kept on buying it. And you know, it was like summer, I was like lying in the lake and got another email that someone bought it for $600, $800. I just upped the prices as it had more features. And by the time I went to San Francisco to work with this company, it already made more than what I made there. But then my whole life was, I still thought like I have to be there, you know? So I did it, and also interestingly at this company I had to.
So when we say that you moved to San Francisco?
Yeah, and of course also it ended up being something where I had to build something with my framework at the company too. But you know, startups are not like 8 hours, a little more, and my personal project was also a little more. So my sleep was a little less, and then eventually after 3 months, Sabine, my manager, came over and said this, "Yeah, are you okay?" And they gave me a choice to either keep working at this company and drop my project or vice versa. And I had 1 week to decide. The counter was 1 week to stay there or leave the country because I was on a complicated visa. And well, the decision was quite easy. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna do my own thing. And
at this point, it was already taking off. You already saw that there's a big business here.
Yeah.
It will probably pay you as much as your US job would have paid.
I was never money driven.
It was more about what were you driven by?
I wanna make stuff that other people find amazing. Like I love picking the details. I love those little delights. It wasn't even that the space, there were competitors in the space. But my angle was always like, I built something as if Apple would have built it. Like with like all the love and care and polish and those little delights that a lot of people in the industry don't get. So even though we have competitors that have way more features and were around way longer, my company was more successful, my product was more successful. Because developers tried it a different ones and mine just felt the best. Yeah, I think software is all about how it feels. Much more so than the feature set. Like why do we buy Apple stuff that has more features than the Windows? But it feels better.
So how did you go from like you left this company and you were building this PDF component that started to sell? At what point did you hire the first person, realizing okay, there's something more to this?
When I went back to Vienna, then I was like, okay, I have to go all in, and that's where I started working with freelancers a little bit. And I was way too late to be honest. Also, like I could have hired much earlier, but now you know it's a big step, and that's kind of where it started in my life of its own. And I spent pretty much 13 years of my career building this product with this little name that I never changed because it took me like I thought like 5 minutes about it, and then it's PSPDF kit. Finally did a rename, but I would have renamed it. But now
it's a mouthful, but it's very unique.
Well, you get it if you do Objective-C because it's just a namespace.
Yes.
And by the time it made perfect sense. My strategy for marketing was always, I only care about the developer. Like I know like upper management does the decisions, but if I can convince the people inside the company, they'll do the marketing and lobbying for me. That works really well. we never did like cold emails or aggressive. It was all inbound. All we did was like make good stuff and write conceptful technical blog posts. And I went to a lot of conferences. Like for me, part of it was okay. If people understand that the people who build this product are like know what they do and love what they do, that reflects on the product, and that worked really well.
And then what was the tech stack behind PSPDF Kit? Was it Objective-C? Was it later Swift? Were there other technologies like C or anything else?
We eventually expanded to all the platforms. Big shift was to switch out Atlas Renderer, which was Aeneas built by Dagi, so like the C++ one. That one then we used across all the frameworks. We were really early with web. We were one of the first PDF frameworks that went in WebAssembly. And I did the most clever thing that it was the very early days when WebAssembly was just taking off. And we built a benchmark. And that benchmark was eventually used by Google and Microsoft and Apple. And I really get all these companies working really hard and making my renderer faster. Because they use their benchmark as one of their benchmarks, and the benchmark was just like rendering our stuff with our shit.
Nice. And then as a company grew, one thing that I remember about PSPDF Kit, you did write a lot of blogs, and one blog in 2019, so this was about like I think year 9 or 10 of the company, it was about how the team worked. And you mentioned things there like every feature starts with a proposal. You mentioned that you are conservative because it's a big API that people use. You want to be careful. Things like the Boy Scout rules to refactor. How did you kind of put together the culture of this team, which was now closer to 30 or 60 people?
We were actually 70 when I sold my shares, and now it's almost 200. And I knew right from the get-go, it's like, I'm not gonna find the people that I need in Vienna. So it was always just like remote first. And eventually we ended up with some kind of hybrid model, which made things a bit more complicated. I learned a whole lot on the go. Like I never had the urge to be CEO. I always was coding. I brought people in, people that helped me a lot with other parts, and on the business side. I can do it, and I think I'm quite good at it, but just don't enjoy it. Like being on sales calls where you like have to like think about a magic number, how much it would be worth, because that's how enterprise works. Worse.
Peter just said, the worst about enterprise sales, because selling to large companies, enterprises, is as tricky as it gets. Not just because you need to get pricing right, but because of all the enterprise features that you need to build. And this leads us nicely to our season sponsor, WorkOS. If you're building with AI agents or automation tools, here's a problem most teams don't think about at first. Once an agent can take actions on your behalf, you need to control what it's allowed to do, and traditional auth just wasn't designed for that. That's why WorkOS introduced MCP Auth, which gives teams a way to authenticate AI agents with explicit permissions, auditability, and enterprise-grade security. Instead of sharing overscoped API keys, you can define clear boundaries for the data that agents can access and the agents they can perform. If you're building AI-powered features and want to ship fast without compromising security, check out workos.com/MCP. And with that, back to Peter and enterprise pricing.
But it's also the only thing that really works on a model like this.
Yeah, you mean enterprise sales specifically,
Yeah.
right? Meaning custom pricing. So can you tell us for devs listening who go to a vendor's website and they're frustrated that there's no price, it says call us or schedule a meeting, why that is?
Oh, that's right, because we're gonna look at your company and then just take the dice and think about a number that you're probably willing to pay. And that sounds horrible, but also when you have a product where you can't really tear it down to a specific number, like it makes a difference if a freelancer contacts us or one of the big Fortune 500s. Let's not say names, because the usage will be different, the value they get out of it will be different. Charging the same, you would either exclude one or the other. If I go too low, they're gonna see this fishy. It's like procurement for like $500, they're gonna even start the process. And if we target too high, we're gonna lose those people. So as horrible and unfair this process seems, for some kind of products it's the most fair way after all. You know on software there is, I would say there's like 4 axes. There's like easy and hard, and interesting and not interesting. We were very much in the not interesting and hard part. If you build something that every developer wants to build, it's gonna be a hard sell. It's a hard sell anyhow.
Yeah.
Selling anything to developers is a hard sell.
Yeah.
But if it's too easy or too interesting, good luck. But if it's, oh god, I don't want to do this, and oh my god, this is hard, that's a good spot to be in. So I found a really interesting niche, and there were just an infinite number of complex problems.
You need to tell me 1 or 2 hard things about parsing data. How hard could it be?
Yeah.
There's a specification. I'm an engineer. I know specifications. What's so hard about
I mean, there was this one example where, like PDF has the head links. So like there's like a table of content, and you click on it, and it goes to like page 37. So I built this whole model with the assumption, maybe there's like 100 or 200 links in there. And then we got this one customer who like paid really good money, and then it was like, it takes 4 minutes to load the PDF. What the heck, guys? And I looked at it, and it was like a 50,000 page text file from Canada. And it had like
50,000 pages.
It had like more than 100 links per page.
500,000 links.
My data model completely exploded because my assumptions were off by a number of 1,000. But by then you have like a mature product with an API. So like, how do you completely redesign the internal part without breaking things for everyone? Like suddenly everything has to be lazy, but before parsing 101 was easy, but now they were like, this was like so difficult to keep it working for people. I think I spent like 2 months just on that, completely redesigning like the internals and like making sure it's still easy for people. They don't have to know what we load easy, what we load lazy, or if you copy the thing, it still has to like to keep some connection.
It needs to keep the references and some of those things.
So I love to do support, and I think that was a confining factor why the company worked. Is if you send a ticket and then the CEO replies and helps you out, that has impact. And my strategy was always like, I always used this in reverse, because if you send a ticket and you get a reply within 5 minutes, that's magical. If you wait 1 or 2 days, not much difference.
Yeah.
So yeah, this was one of the things I worked 2 months, and I finally got it down to almost like this.
That's satisfying.
And it was very satisfying.
And you were writing a lot of the code, or you were involved in a bunch of the code. Obviously, a big team was now here, but you were still kind of overseeing it, right?
I
mean, the details.
I mean, of course, I had a really great team, and some parts I was more involved. I was always more involved in mobile because that's where my heart was. But I was always very deep in the tech and the marketing side, the business side. I had like Jonathan's house, I had Martin's house. I found good people. The thing is, if you like blogging and then writing about how you solve interesting hard problems, will help you hire interesting people that want to solve interesting problems.
This is what I remember at PSPDF Kit, that your blog was every now and then it made it to Hacker News as well, but it was just interesting to read, and I couldn't name, again, I'm not into PDFs, but if I had to say something like PDF, I would have said PSPDF Kit, because they're the only ones where I read interesting engineering blogs about how you optimize your ship. It's still there, by the way. I myself also sometimes ask myself, like, interesting, do more companies not see this? Or is the question that you need to be a developer who's either the CEO or up there, who just likes doing this? And by the way, did you ever write this thinking this will be helpful, or you just wrote because you got something out of it, like putting out that you solved this hard problem?
I like sharing and like inspiring people. There was sometimes even conflicts where we were like, should we write about this, because it's like a little bit of secret sauce. But I just never listened to the voices too much. I just, there's also like when you write something down, there's this principle of like, you understand it, but then if you want to teach it, you really have to understand it. So to me, it was also a little bit like, oh yeah, I worked on this really hard problem, and now I want to like preserve it and like help others. So I got a gig out of it. Of course, I like the attention, but really it was this. Sometimes I just reference a year later to my own post, like, yeah, this is both company documentation. This is like my own logbook. It's helpful in so many ways. And a lot of those bigger companies, they put on too much red tape. There's a lot of developers who don't really like to write. So I forced everyone once a month, a full day, just to write a blog post.
But you gave them the time. You're like, that day you don't need to do any of your work, but write something.
Yeah, you have a day to come up with a post. A day is quite much, actually. I mean, nowadays when I write posts, it still takes me a few hours. I don't want to dwell too much on like I think that the starting time of your company is the most interesting. The growth phase, you get more red tape, you get more people. It's much more gardening your product instead of like doing white hacks and more iterative. So it got a little bit less interesting over the years, and there was like more people drama.